Okay. Hey, it's Pete Gustis here with the Small Business Resource Center and the Small Business Resource Center YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be interviewing Vem Miller, who's been falsely accused of being a would-be assassin at the Coachella rally in California, October 2024. And the reason why I'm interviewing him is so we can set the record straight and let people know that he was truly falsely accused. He's actually a Trump supporter, and so you know how the biased liberal media is and how an overzealous police force can sometimes cause people to be falsely accused of crimes they didn't commit. We're also going to talk about some of the positive things Vem Miller does and some of the things he does for his health. And then we're going to go into gun laws and how this is affecting his life. So just so you know, I'm not looking at this from a biased lens. I am actually a registered Democrat, by the way, and 12 years ago, when I first registered as a Democrat, I was told by another Democrat, he said, "You're going to have a problem." And I said, "What do you mean? I'm a registered Democrat and we're in a Democrat area." And he said, "Yeah, but you don't follow the party lines and you don't follow what the liberal side wants you to do." And I said, "Well, if I'm a registered Democrat, why do I have to follow everything?" And he said, "Well, this is what's going to happen." He said, "Whenever you talk to someone and they know you're not following the party line, they're going to cut and splice whatever you say, and they're going to tell the story that they want to tell you." And I didn't believe him. At first, I thought this guy doesn't want me to win because he told me to do one of three things. He said, one, don't interview with anyone. And keep in mind, if you're trying to set the record straight or tell people positive things you want to do, like them here, you want people to know your side of the story. So I thought this guy is trying to sabotage me and I'm not going to listen. He said, two, switch and follow the party line and follow everything the liberal Democrats want. And of course, I'm a person of my own means. I never voted party line, well, until this last election. and I did vote for Trump, of course, but we're not getting into politics of me right now. Just I'm an honest person as I can be. And he said, three, if you do get interviewed, what you need to do is you have to tell the interviewer, one, I will allow to be interviewed long as you sign something that my statements will not be edited at all, because the liberal media likes to cut and splice. I was interviewed recently again, and I thought it was for TV. It was for TV, excuse me, but I thought I was going to have a fair shot. And I was interviewed for about 8 minutes. They took about a 5-second segment of this whole 8-minute interview, and they edited everything else and said, "This is what we talked about." And I was like, well, this is stupid. And I really thought I was going to be able to get my message out. But when somebody edits all your words, most of the times they're telling you the story they want you to know, not the story you're particularly telling. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to let them tell his story.
Yeah, so we have a lot in common, actually, because I was actually a Democrat. You know, I came up in terms of my college years during the time of, Clinton, but then George W. Bush really had an effect on me because of the corruption of that particular regime and cancel culture 1.0, at least in my lifetime, the Patriot Act, the very unnecessary Iraq war, the subsequent housing crisis, and that really soured me from Republicans. So I thought Barack Obama was the answer because of, hope and change. I didn't realize the hope and change he was talking about was different than the hope and change I had in my mind, which is the danger of these vague terms. But, coming in, he seemed as though he was going to be anti-war, which was a big thing because so many of our soldiers were perishing and coming back with, PTSD, mental health issues because of the horrendous things that happened in Iraq. And so many, Iraqis lost their lives, murdered in that very unnecessary war. So I thought Barack Obama was the answer. And that was during, I was a Democrat up to that point. Around 2015, I start hearing Trump talk. And I'm like, I liked the bare knuckles approach he had against these corrupt politicians, because at that point I'd arrived to the conclusion that Barack Obama was just George W. Bush with charisma and pretty much continuing the same policies, globalist policies, unnecessary wars. And so became a fan of Donald Trump. And then at that same time, what you're talking about in terms of the liberal media, what they do is I'm actually working in media for all these years, starting in the 90s and getting to much higher positions starting in 2001. In 2008, I started creating and selling TV shows. I'm involved in a lot of different networks, seeing behind the scenes in the newsrooms. And when Donald Trump, really what changed me was when they were doing something called Frankenbiting, which is basically Frankensteining footage in order to present Donald Trump in a false light. And they do this sort of thing where, like you said, rather than just showing the footage, they show you a little clip, and they always choose that little clip, which is, made to, could be interpreted in different ways. And they don't show you the beginning and the end purposely, because if you actually saw the whole thing, then you wouldn't arrive to the crazy conclusions they want you to arrive to,
Yes.
Very much, like they did that recently with, he made a comment about Liz Cheney that, how would she feel like if she was forced to go into an unnecessary war and have guns pointed at her, right? Which is a very legitimate question to ask if you're going to be voting for very unnecessary wars that traumatize and kill our American civilians and soldiers. And so they turned that into, he's talking about, murdering Liz Cheney, and he's threatening Liz Cheney. And that's a perfect example of how they Frankenbite footage, right? And so when I started seeing this in the mainstream industry, the thing that was very shocking was that people that I work with and I'm friends with, or I was friends with, a lot of producers, network executives, agents, they seem to be part of this mass formation psychosis, which, this narrative of Orange Man bad, damn be the evidence, damn be the unedited footage, damn be the footage that is not bookended by, commentators that have their own agenda and they're trying to sell lies, And that
Yes.
really became taxing around 2015 to 2018, where I just didn't want to be part of the lies. I didn't want to be part of the lies. And even though I was making a lot of money, and had I stayed in that business, I would say ungodly amounts of money with, my skill sets and stuff, it just became untenable for me to be part of that fraud. I mean, it's fraud, it's deception, it's lies. It's not what I signed up for. I think of myself as an artist. Really, I love the art form of creating content, documentaries, music videos, commercials, directing long form pieces. I mean, I truly am very passionate about that, but I never saw myself as like, there was that, Hitler's propagandist, like Lena Riefenstahl, I think, Riefenstein or whatever. And I never saw myself as like a tool of propaganda, and certainly wasn't willing to sell my soul for that. So that became really difficult, and I left the business altogether in 2018. I did something completely different. I got into manufacturing because I was reaching a burnout point at that time. And that was actually a really great thing to do because I despised manufacturing and sales so much that within 2 years, I started getting back into media again, but getting into it, reinvigorated. What I say is kind of like the youthful energy and enthusiasm that I had in the early 2000s when I first started. And so got back into it, but this time got back into it in the terms of independent media through my network, which is called the America Happens Network, americahappens.com. For viewers out there, please go there, subscribe, because we do truly uncensored media, and the stories we've exposed, the news we've exposed, and the podcasts we've done, and the documentaries we've done are so much more truthful and relevant to what's happening in America, rather than the propaganda that they're trying to always sell us for their own gain, and really to keep the people mentally oppressed. It's a mental warfare. General Flynn and Boone Cutler wrote a book called Fifth Generation Warfare. As I started learning about these things through doing a lot of documentary work, investigative journalism, and podcasts, I began realizing that without even knowing, I was a tool of fifth generation warfare. But the way it would happen is that, for example, I'd sell a show and there'd be a certain message and an approach to the show, right? And then halfway through development or production, certain mandates would come down, inserting certain messages. It would always be couched in terms of demographic studies, like this is what the people want. And that never made sense to me. And I remember being, upset at the time when these things happened that were not the best artistic choices, the best creative choices. It's very difficult to dedicate, half a year, sometimes more to projects, a series, a pilot, and then kind of see it really flush down the toilet because of these external agendas. And then through learning, because of documentary, I mean, if documentaries, podcasts are and investigative journalism, for those that are of astute mind, are like, it's incredible what you learn. You could learn everything under the sun if you just pay attention. And so I started seeing how it all works. Like, for example, the General Flynn Boone Cutler example with the fifth generation warfare book and the seminars they give. James O'Keefe did an expose about how the CNN folks in the 2020 election were, having these breakfast meetings with people that are not part of the network, and then coming to the network and having these directives and agendas. And what's clear in that is that these are intelligence community members dictating what your television ultimately shows, right? And it's always for this kind of lower frequency, lower, darker kind of mindset things, right? Where, something I always hear is that Americans are stupid, right? And this would happen in, TV or production board meetings. And there'd be a, goal to dumb down the content. And funny enough, as much as there's a lot of issues with Britain, but whenever I was in England, I would notice that their content is a lot more fruitful. Whereas in America, we seem to be, doing things where it's like promiscuity, families breaking up is entertainment, women getting into knockout, drag out fights, just garbage, really just
Shop
garbage.
news and garbage.
Garbage.
Yeah.
And, we come from, the former British Empire. So you would think that if the Brits could handle fruitful content that actually teaches one something that helps them to become better at whatever, whether it's better at cooking, whether it's better intellectual thinkers, whatever it is, even their music videos were my favorite music videos because there was a lot of smart, creative, groundbreaking work happening. And so I was like, why can't we do that over here? Well, lo and behold, it's there's a system in place by nefarious forces to make sure that we are dumbed down and we are thinking, and it's not just like the content, it's like the actual frequencies of the television, the sound frequencies. I mean, there's legitimate evidence that our music sound frequencies change from something that was more uplifting to something that's not, that's more of a darker energy. Same with the scanning of the television and the hypnosis state that it puts people under. So it's all kind of geared towards oppressing us. And really, preventing positive forward evolution because for some reason the powers that, that goes with the fluoride, that goes with the removing of church bells in all of our cities, which actually have healing factors in terms of that sound wave. Pretty much across the board, it seems to be to oppress and control. And so I really want to break out. Huh?
Oh, I was going to say, I've always been a firm believer that the media, a long time ago, the Nazis and the media realized that when they flash popcorn on movies, they flash it so quick that a regular person can't see it, but the subconscious mind sees it.
Yeah.
So they flash popcorn, they would flash soda, and sales would go up 20,
Yeah.
30%.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be illegal to do that. But I'm a firm
It
believer that
was.
they do this
Yeah.
type of thing all the time to convince people to like things or change their opinion on things that they may
Yeah.
not necessarily agree to. And other
Yeah.
people are like, well, the government wouldn't do that. Well, the news wouldn't do that. And I say, well, look at the things they're promoting. They're not necessarily positive, and some
Mhm.
of the things are outright lies, but the
Mhm.
people who believe a lot of these things are so ingrained in it that they're having meltdowns on social media right now.
Oh yeah.
I shouldn't be laughing because they're feeling a real pain, but in my opinion, I think it takes a lot of programming and constant input for them to have these, in my opinion, should be unrealistic feelings of something that's happening. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I like today, like so many meltdowns today on social media because people think that, the majority of Americans just voted for Hitler because that's what the boob tube told them, and not doing their own research, not doing, any of that kind of stuff. It's just like believing what's coming out of the television. And the great tragedy here is, and again, it happened in COVID, is that people, as opposed to trusting their own families, like I remember my grandma, for example, was raised in a little village in the Middle East. We're Armenian, but because of the Armenian genocide, we're all displaced into these mostly Near Eastern and Middle Eastern countries. And then a lot of us came to the West. But, the things that she would tell me, as ludicrous as it might sound to the Western mind that is brainwashed into this Rockefeller type medicine, petroleum based, would work. I remember I used to, if I got a sprain or something, she would make some dough with yeast, like the stuff that you make bread out of, wrap it around the sprain, and then voila, like 12 hours later, the sprain heals. Whereas if I'm using the pharmaceutical based stuff, I'm limping for 2 weeks, right? And it's just taking the pain away as opposed to healing. And so, very early on, I learned to trust my grandma, who had a sixth grade education, and knew a lot of things that were actually that work, versus in Western medicine, they don't work. And so you see this rift between family, trusting each other. Like, I have family members that I told them don't take the COVID jab. I have a lot of information because I interview all these frontline doctors, and they would prefer to disassociate themselves with me because the TV, CNN told them I'm a crazy right-wing conspiracy theorist, as opposed to trust their own family. This is the great tragedy of brainwashing. I'll give you another example where there's an episode of Deadliest Catch that I was peripherally involved in, where events happened 3 months apart, right? But then they Frankenbited it together to create a false, more dramatic situation than those two independent events. And the actual people that were on camera experiencing it remember the edited version, and they don't remember that that was actually two different events 3 months apart, which
Wow.
tells you the power of brainwashing, which tells you why they want to hold on to the mainstream media. It also tells you why that, once the independent media, the Crowders of the world, the Alex Jones of the world, really started becoming powerful in the 2010s, then subsequent to the Trump election in 2016, and before the 2020 election, they had to clamp down on it because it wasn't about misinformation and bad things being put out there. It was because they were about to topple, because nobody was trusting them. And that was their way of using government to seize control of the mind, because it is the most important thing. More so important than any other category is control of the mind, because that ultimately dictates the politics, dictates people's power. And so all those things made me want to step out of that business, create my own network with other like-minded individuals, and that is America Happens, americahappens.com, the America Happens Network, which our goal has been to basically redefine the network for this 21st century and set the new paradigm, which is obviously an immense challenge because we got censored all over the place. We got canceled on YouTube, got kicked off of Twitter 1.0. And unfortunately, a lot of the work and money we spend in building, we had to then rebuild on platforms like Rumble, the new X. Recently, we got on Roku and Amazon Fire and Apple TV. And so they certainly made it a challenge for the truth to come out. And so that's kind of the background of how I got to where I got. But essentially, starting in 2018 and certainly in 2020, I started producing a lot of pro-freedom, pro-constitution, pro-Trump content. And so I'm integrally involved in that world. I'm respected by a lot of individuals because of the work that I do on my own time and dime, because it's hard to make money doing this stuff, really for the fight for freedom. And then as I'm going to this Coachella Trump rally, well, the week and a half before that, I'm conducting surveillance in dangerous locations in California. I leave from Nevada. I go to these surveillance locations involving 150 semi-trucks and trailers filled with unlawful ballots being moved across the western half of the United States. And so I'm conducting surveillance, and there's evidence of this that eventually I will release, where I'm at truck stops with my SUV, standing out like a sore thumb because I'm amongst 300, huge semis, trying to take pictures, video of these unlawful ballots being moved via semi-trucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I carry I have my Glock and my shotgun in the back of my SUV, which is something that I do just for protection, lawfully so. And so I'm going to a Trump rally to essentially have a special invite. I'm supposed to meet a bunch of friends there, and we're just going on a social basis to hang out. And so I realized that there's heightened security. And so before I enter the parking lot area, I pull up to a police officer, and this has all been recorded, by the way, because my instinct told me at that moment that I had to run my audio recorder. And so I pull up to this police officer, and my biggest concern at that time is, I'm not seeing the calamity that eventually happened. What I'm seeing is that he might tell me to make a U-turn and go back home. And now I'm going to drive for 4 hours. I'm not going to see my friends. And that's going to suck, Yeah. But we unfortunately hit a new level of suck that was not planned, So I drive up to a police officer, and you hear this in the recording, which, by the way, you could see on my Twitter account, which is not Vem Miller. It's just Vem Miller with an N-O-T in front of it.
Okay, and we're going to have all the social links to everything Vem has, so you know. So listen to his story, and we'll be posting all the social links. Go ahead, Vem.
Amazing. So I pull up to this police officer who's wearing a sheriff's vest. He's a regular police officer, but wearing a sheriff of Riverside County vest. And simply, I say, hey, sir. And then you hear in the audio, he's coming closer to me because I'm the one that was waving him down. And I say, hi, sir. I'm just want to let you know I'm from Nevada. I have a couple of firearms in the back, lawfully purchased, and I'm part of the Republican Party. I'm a Trump team leader. I even ran for office. And really, the reason I'm saying this stuff, and I'm sure any listeners could hear it in my voice, is because I want to make him feel comfortable because I'm aware of the heightened security measures. And I want to let him know that I'm just, I'm part of the team over here. And, I'm not some crazy person, right? Which also the practicality of the situation, which is that the parking lot and the actual location of the rally are about half a mile apart. They do that because of bomb threats and things like that. If somebody, has their car filled with, bombs, they could actually do an assassination via explosion. So I'm aware of this because this is my 20-something Trump event, including rallies. And I've been to a lot of private events with Trump where it's just, 200 people in the room and stuff, right? And so I tell him this information, and the next thing I know, they're telling me to get out of my car, handcuffing me without even reading my Miranda rights. And that's where the torturous, traumatic series of events really started. And frankly, the sheriff, so what happens on that day is that the Secret Service and FBI quickly say, and this is October 12th, that I'm not there for bad things. Like, they make it very clear that there's we've checked him out. He's all good, right? Nonetheless, I'm arrested. The FBI and Secret Service had two opportunities to interrogate me, which they did not. They declined. And then the next morning, that night I'm thinking, okay, they're just towing my car. And this sucks, and I have all my clothes, all my equipment in the car, right? And I'm thinking that's the worst of it. But then I wake up the next morning, I go to get tacos, and literally dressed in the same clothes I was wearing the day before, no toiletries, nothing, just feeling gross. and really feeling very traumatized by what they had done. And while I'm eating my tacos, I start perusing the internet and I start realizing that I'm being called the third assassin, which has been promoted specifically by the sheriff of Riverside named Sheriff Chad Bianco. His real name is Johnny, actually, but he likes to call himself Chad for some reason. And so Sheriff Johnny Bianco goes in front of the world, calls me a lunatic, says that he knows I was there to do bad things, that I'm a third assassin, and says that I'm anti-government. I'm part of these radical anti-government groups. He tells one news organization that I actually made verbal statements about my intentions to kill fill in the blank at this rally. All completely lies. He also says that it was his deputies that investigated my car after being suspicious, which the recording clearly shows that that's not what happened. I actually drove up to him and declared out of my own, fruition to, let him know what's going on. Because again, my biggest worry was they're going to make me do a U-turn because of the heightened security. I didn't think they're going to go completely, ballistic on me, more or less, And so then I found out probably 10:30, whenever it happened, the press conference, because it was pretty rapid in terms of the entire international news media, called me the third assassin and these ludicrous, untruthful things, like I was released on $5,000 bail. I was not released on $5,000 bail. I paid zero. They gave me a ticket. The ticket was for having 4 extra bullets in my gun, because in Nevada, when you buy a Glock, it comes with a 14 bullet mag, where I guess in California, it's capped at 10. Also, I had my mag in the gun versus the mag and gun separated. And that was literally it. That was like the ticket I got, which at most is $1,000 fine, and nothing else. If you don't have prior criminal, if you're not a domestic abuser, it's pretty much that's it,
The funny thing about that story is it still has that story online
Yeah.
that you mentioned. So they have not redacted it. And the other thing that people don't know, a lot of people don't know, I should say, is the gun laws in every state's different. And the one thing that they should change is the government needs to recognize that. So when you go to another state, instead of prosecuting someone, the police
Mhm.
should explain that, hey, the gun laws are different in this state, and be, I want to say, more careful to the person. I know in Pennsylvania, with the gun laws being different, and it's
Mhm.
easier to get a carrier's permit,
Mhm.
sometimes people from Pennsylvania have gone to New Jersey or New York and have done something like pass a stop sign or get pulled over speeding. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden, they do what you did. They say, "Hey, I just want to let you know I have a carrier's permit and I have a gun in the car." And then all of a sudden, they're getting a fine. And I've heard of some actually getting arrested, like yourself, and having major problems for something that's legal in their state. But for
Mhm.
some reason, the cop decided to make a big deal out of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's something called reciprocity, I think, where they're
Yeah.
supposed to do that, but it's not like, obviously you're dealing with somebody here in the sheriff that's not very bright and forward thinking. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone on record, starting basically a defamation case of the century. Nothing's ever been this radical, I don't think, in terms of defamation. I don't think I've ever heard a situation like this. And it's kind of tantamount to that, lawsuit of Sandy Hook and Alex Jones. Obviously, their version of what happened there, but if you look at that lawsuit, that's a $1.5 billion judgment. And this situation is actually worse, according to a lot of legal experts I talk with, right?
Hmm.
And so somebody that's even got an inkling of the law wouldn't do that sort of thing, including laws of reciprocity, where,
Yes.
I'm coming from Nevada, uh, you know, yes, everybody's supposed to know the law everywhere. Ignorance is not an excuse, but we're talking about something here that's clearly unconstitutional, going against our government laws. So anyway, like they once I hear that this is international news, within an hour to an hour and a half, I put a video together where I had to leave the taco place, get situated in the motel room that I ended up finding, middle of that night after I was released from prison, and I gave a detailed account, hour and 6 minutes, where I describe everything. And I did that intentionally because I knew exactly what had happened. I knew that they were lying, and I knew that this would be time stamped, and that would be something that would be key in rectifying the matter. And so I put this video out, and that video obviously spread all over the world. Different media outlets used it as part of their, reporting. Unfortunately, there was never a cleanup of, they spent 48 hours attacking me, and it's not like they gave me 48 hours to clean the record. It was not, it was more that people that are watching start to realize that the official account just sounded ridiculous, right? Where you have somebody arrested for potentially assassinate or trying to assassinate someone. They're released that same morning, $5,000 bail, which is totally untrue. Like I said, it was $0 and a ticket. But even $5,000 bail does not sound correct. So it was by virtue of the story sounding so flawed that people realized. But the mainstream media did absolutely nothing beyond that to help correct the record. And so I've been going on a lot of podcasts and media, simply, talking to, people. And again, I noticed exactly what you were saying earlier, where they, even when I give them my account of what happened, they edit out most of it, right? Because they seem to have no incentive to correct the record, right?
Yeah, or
And
tell the truth. They want to tell the truth that they have.
yeah, exactly. And so that's the general situation. Subsequent to that, so on the 12th, the FBI and Secret Service clear me. On the 13th, Sheriff Bianco goes public with accusing me of all these crazy things, that I'm a lunatic, anti-government, which, by the way, the anti-government thing is really interesting, too, because I've been helping government officials, whether it's, in 2008, helping the Barack Obama campaign, whether it's helping the Donald Trump campaign in 2020, 2024, or running for office in 2022. So if I was anti-government, I seem to be spending a lot of time pushing government officials, including running for office to make myself a government official. So, it's like anybody that thinks about it, and that's where the narrative falls apart, because it stops making sense for people that are deeper thinkers than just trying to grab what the, liberal media is saying, right? The sheriff, unfortunately, gave the liberal media everything they wanted to hear, because I think this was more about making sure Trump doesn't win, because, look at these crazy Trumpers, like, he's a Trump fan and he wants to harm Trump, and he's anti-government, and he carries guns with high capacity magazines, which is like, that sounds like a machine gun, but that's not the case. This was like a standard mag that comes with every Glock in Nevada that you buy, right? And so, then started the repair of the whole thing. But on the 13th, my parents' home was invaded by anti-terrorism officers. They came back on the 14th with a group of, I believe, 12 of them, tried to force their way into the house, even though they had no warrant. It was clear that this was a rogue group, and we're going to find out how this was instigated. I think this was actually Sheriff Bianco probably realizing the mistake he made and trying to, terrorize me in order to shut me up. And in a lot of those situations, what you hear is that the person's gunned down because they reach for something, right? And I truly think that was the ultimate goal, was to shut me up. I wasn't at the location because that's the place where I get my mail sent. I actually live in a different location that is off the books. And the reason is because of the content we produce. I started getting death threats to my home in 2022. Wow. And so I made sure that address wasn't on record, but I have some mail sent to my parents' home. And somebody that doesn't do the research to find out what's going on there might think that I actually live there. And so this anti-terrorism group was, what I've heard, they're rogue because the sheriff of Clark County did not authorize them. And I think, if I was to guess, I would think that there was a nefarious intent there that had nothing to do, because you also have the feds clearing me on the 12th. So on the 13th, 14th, it's not in the state's purview, but then you have state level anti-terrorism officers trying to invade without a warrant my parents' home. And so all of that sounds unlawful. All of that sounds illegal. All of that sounds rogue. And when you get into that category, then you must ask, what is their intention to do such rogue, unlawful, corrupt things, So it's been nuts. It's definitely been a crazy experience. I've had to go into hiding. You can't even search my name. I was dating a girl that broke up with me via text message because I was announced as this international assassin terrorist guy. I'm fearful is like if I apply for like, housing or loan or anything, it's like I can't really use my name now because of all, like the internet's forever. You're going to find an abundance of lies out there about me. And so, we had to file a lawsuit soon after these events. I think on the 15th, we filed a lawsuit against the sheriff, his county. We're exploring our options in terms of the media that continues propagating the lies. And there's another thing that happened is that Sheriff Bianco more recently, rather than apologize and limit the amount of damage done to his department and the Riverside community, because I do think this is actually going to bankrupt them completely, because this is not the first case. There's been multiple cases, a lot of wrongdoings or accusations of, but they've tangibly lost, a lot of money. Last judgment was $7.5 million. I heard there was another one that was around that number because of similar kind of just bad behavior. It's it's a pretty crazy experience overall. Like, it's a pretty crazy experience of being put in that list of like 10, 15 individuals in American history that have the most notorious names. And the truth and reality of it is that, my work is very verifiable, that it's like I could even be more opposite person as somebody that's put their own time, dime, and talent into trying to help President Trump. And I truly do believe that if it wasn't for individuals like myself and the 200 other patriot podcasters out there doing great work, I mean, I don't think we'd be looking at a Trump presidency, because the only way these people even got a semblance of the truth was because of our new media, not the legacy media.
Yeah,
And
for
so,
sure. Stuff
yeah,
like X and what you're doing,
yeah. So that's a general
and
story.
Rumble.
Yeah, I mean, I know it sounds pretty wild, but I think it tells you what kind of epidemic of corruption and immoral behavior, lawlessness that we're facing from clearly our governments, clearly from the media. And the reason I think Trump won for in large part is because people are sick of that. People are just sick of it. People are sick of the brainwashing, the lies.
Yeah,
Uh,
after a while, you see through all of it and you start to notice too many things different. But we are
yeah,
running out of time. Can you tell
yeah.
us where the best links to get all your information? But I'm going to be posting all your links. Just let me know what you want us
Amer-
to know
America
and where to
happens
go.
dot americahappens.com is the website. Please subscribe. Please donate, because that's how we make our content, is through donations to our Give Send Go account, and also my X account at not Vem Miller, NOT Vem Miller.
Okay, thanks. And this is Vem Miller. This is his story, and it's a great story. I know in the end he's going to get the justice he deserves. Thank you very much, Vem.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Have a great day.
You too.
It's Pete Gustis with the Small Business Resource Center YouTube channel, and this was the interview with Vem Miller. I found some important information, so like and subscribe to this content if you want more, but we will have a link to this. When you're on Vem Miller's website, americanhappens.com, you have a social media link to every social that he has. We're going to put most of these in the description, but it's very easy to go to americanhappens.com, find them all here. And he has a lot of featured content that's really important. One of the things I found very interesting, Bundy versus the Deep State. It's an original documentary that he made, and that is on Rumble, so you can watch that. I'm going to be watching that this evening. So check it out. There's just tons of information, more than I thought I was going to be finding. So if you're looking for content like this, feel free to check it out, americanhappens.com. It's Pete with the Small Business Resource Center, Small Business Resource Center YouTube channel. Have a great day.